ET contact occurs intergenerationally, which means that within an ancestral lineage, usually there are specific families of interdimensionality that the humans are interacting with, that these generations are connecting with, which is why the mother usually does it. The father has similar experiences, similar, they see similar beings, races, you can say. And I want to clarify why I'm putting that in quotes, because we tend to have a very compartmentalized way of seeing and looking at things like we have in our world. We have different cultures, different races, different features that make up different groups of people. But really, the way that we want to look at this is more like spectrum of vibrational frequencies, which then define the dimension from which these beings are manifesting into some form for us to see them.
Hi, I'm Lovely and this is The Lovely Life. In my last video, you must have seen Geraldine Orozco explaining all about her life-changing experience where she was taken into an aircraft, an alien aircraft, and that whole experience became a positive, life-changing gift for her, and how now she works with all the various beautiful beings out there for for the improvement and growth of us in general. So I would like to touch more on what she did on the craft and what was the whole abduction story. And she doesn't like to call it abduction because it wasn't actually something she didn't sign up before she came here. She did sign up for it as a soul. So we would discuss more on her whole hybrid family and the children that she has and all the experiences that she had in the craft and what happened after that. In case you haven't seen the video, I would be putting the link on the I button top there. You can click on it and please go and watch it. It's a wonderful, beautiful experience that she had, and it might open your eyes on all the new things that maybe you've never heard before. So welcome, Geraldine.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a
Welcome
pleasure to
back.
be here again.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure talking to you. We spoke a lot about what happened, how you were taken, which helped you realize what gifts you had and how they helped you work with people on earth and with them on various things, on spiritual growth, on meditation, and how everything came into place. And slowly you started realizing what are you here for, whether, what's your purpose. And yeah, so I hope I'm making sense. But yeah, so we talked all about that. I would like to know more on your children. You said that you were there and you met your children. And I felt that I could not ask more on that. So how many children you have as of now? Hybrid children, if I may ask?
Yeah, so what I discovered is that I had 24 hybrid children.
Wow.
And when we think about that, we're like, oh my gosh, that's a lot, right? We think it's a lot because we're thinking of it in human terms.
Yes.
But really, what that means is that what was removed are 24 eggs that have then been germinated and,
Yeah.
hybridized into beings of some sort that either
Mm-hmm.
have manifested into some physical form and also have not manifested in a physical form. Because not
Mm-hmm.
all of the programs are really for the purpose of creating life. Some of them
Okay.
are temporary kind of experiments that they do in hybridization, I guess you can say biological experiments that are blending, because what DNA is, what the egg and the sperm is a massive database of information. And that's really what is the interest when it comes to the hybridization program. The focus is in creating new living organisms that are broad spectrum, meaning that they can move interdimensionally at the highest
Mm-hmm.
potential rate. And so, in a sense, there's an element of genetic modification that is taking place with these organisms, that certain genetic data is either activated or deactivated, as in with the human code, in order to create different things. You know, like we in our using CRISPR here on Earth, we also can genetically modify the gene code, and we have what we know as designer babies to create children with different color eyes, special IQs, resistant to illnesses. Those are all things that in our science we are learning and we're coming into now, more into mainstream. So think of that kind of a program. Similarly, this hybridization program utilizes that genetic data to create these kinds of organisms. And
Yeah.
so from the 24, I met in person in the physical 4 of 8 that have been shown to me under one specific uh, project, you could say, or group
Yeah.
agenda that was
Mm-hmm.
specifically working with me. Yeah. Mhm.
Oh, wow. And do they have a gender, like, like in the babies,
Yeah.
the hybrid babies, do they have a gender?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so it really depends on the group. Um, because our DNA is very complex, the layers of frequency that make up our DNA will define what dimensions we have access to. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Because DNA functions in a coiling spiral form, the spiral is the most intelligent design of the universe in order to hold
Mm-hmm.
massive amounts of information. And it's also the design in which most organisms have the ability of moving in between dimensions. So the
Yeah.
coil form, we actually use that in our own physical bodies through our toroidal field in dream time in order to
Yeah.
navigate alternate dimensions. But in the same way, the DNA will allow the human to access these different dimensions encoded. So what these hybrids are doing in different agendas, some of them can be inversions of nature, or perhaps some groups that are darker, you can say, in that their main focus is to pool as much life force from whatever they're creating, and it's just a temporary thing. So the children, or and not don't think about just children, just sometimes they create entity type of beings with the DNA and pool from that life force, or use it in cycles, in very parasitic cycles, to receive something or to put them to work. You can think of something like that as almost like a slave kind of example. And other higher vibration, let's say higher, within the construct of the matrix, keep that in mind, are meant to carry out the survival, or supporting the matrix, the maintenance of the matrix. What is the matrix? The matrix is everything within the 3-dimensional plane, 3 to 5 dimensional plane, in which we are experiencing as complex organisms duality. And why that's important, because we're complex organisms, we transmute life force in many different ways. And that transmutation process of life force is very valuable, because you can shift, you can change the organism, you can change the matrix, because it's an interconnected system. You can utilize the organism to reincarnate in the system and continue sustaining certain programs, certain
Mm-hmm.
structures that can sometimes be parasitic, and which are benefited by some groups, some darker groups. So,
Mm.
it's kind of a complex program. There are many kinds of agendas, and interdimensional agendas make up one part, but there are also terrestrial agendas in the hybridization program
Yeah.
that are very focused on um, eugenics kind of programs
Mm-hmm.
through history since World War II and before as well, but more vividly after World War II. Um, those are more governmental things. So these are the different kinds of groups, that kind of an overview, but there's many of them.
Were you abducted only for the hybridization program, or there were other things that they wanted you to work with them for the planet?
So abduction, which is, it's not really abduction. It seems like abduction to us because we
Hmm.
think that we're not really contributing to what's happening, or we're not
Yeah.
agreeing, or it's happening without our consent. But actually, I want to turn the entire thing kind of inside out, in a way where you understand that actually it's from the inside out. All of these things are
Hmm.
occurring from the human, and the way that the hybridization function, and even contact occurs, is everything that's encoded in your DNA, everything that you are made up of. So, and
Yeah.
this is where things get kind of interesting. Imagine that you are a database of information, and that everything that you have been, let's say in past lives, or potential future aspects of yourself, um, are all recorded in the DNA.
Hmm.
And the DNA is kind of a database which doesn't function in a linear timeline. It projects into the holographic field multidimensionally, in a way that everything is occurring simultaneously. And I know that that's kind of a lot, but that simultaneous availability of information through each present moment of your life
Yeah.
allows you to activate or deactivate certain aspects of your DNA, which simply means that every choice that you make plays a role in a potential timeline that you have available to accessing. So ET contact functions like that. ET contact is interdimensional. So the human pretty much has to activate certain level of their DNA, certain intuitive abilities. And some people are born with these abilities because they already have more of their hybrid elements accessible,
Yes.
which means they are very interdimensional already at birth, which means they have a lot of DNA activated, interdimensional elements of their DNA. So this is something that every human can access from the inside out. They can access their multidimensional information. And
Hmm.
ET contact occurs intergenerationally, which means that within an ancestral lineage, usually there are specific families of interdimensionality that the humans are interacting with, that these generations are connecting with, which is why the mother usually does it. The father has similar
Hmm.
experiences, similar, they see similar beings, races, you can say.
Hmm.
And I want to clarify why I'm putting that in quotes, because we tend to have a very compartmentalized way of seeing and looking at things, like we have in our
Yeah.
world. We have different cultures, different races, different features that make up different groups of people. But really, the way that we want to look at this is more like spectrum of vibrational frequencies, which then define the dimension from which these beings are manifesting into some form for us to see them.
Yeah.
So, for example, blue beings,
Hmm.
Lyrans, Syrians, Arcturians,
Pleiadians.
Pleiadians. Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
all of that is encoded in our DNA, and the way we have access to seeing it is that we are activating that DNA from within ourselves, and it's being projected into this experience. So
Hmm.
that's how it functions. So when we talk about hybridization, these are, let's say, agreements through our genetic construct that we make
Yeah.
with ourselves first in order to access that information. And it has to do with the the family lineages that we are co-creating with in procreation,
Hmm.
but also with the vibrational groups that we are interacting with in dream time. Because it's very,
Yeah.
interdimensional travel is occurring in dream time, essentially,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Always,
yeah,
right? Yeah. So I
right.
understand. So the basic, our understanding of consent, it comes up. We think we do not have consent, and the whole connotation about abduction comes because we think in
Yeah.
this life we never gave consent to that. although we've signed up for this as a soul, you know, and it runs in
Yeah.
the lineage. And that's why
Yeah.
in your last video, in our last session, you explained how a lot of people in the same family experience this,
Yes.
right? Which was the case
Right.
with you also. Like your mother has always been open to these things, and she has also been on various crafts, and she has similar experiences. Yeah,
That's
so
right.
I
Yeah. And other
understand that.
family members. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. I know that we as humans, the kind of life that we have on Earth, all the races, because of the life lessons we have, particularly on Earth, and the whole construct, the physical construct lets us experience life in a beautiful way, good and bad of it, the
Hmm.
contrast. So
Yeah.
I know all the races have eyes on us. But when we talk about, there are these very evolved beings like Pleiadians, for instance. They are much evolved than us, spiritually, and whether it comes, whether talk about technology and stuff like that. So I know that they're quite evolved. So why they choose us for, if, for instance, why the hybridization
Right.
and why with us?
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really the question that kind of helps us understand the difference between high vibration and maybe not so high vibration, because
Yeah.
um, we begin to see an element of imbalanced exchanges, manipulation, parasitism within our
Hmm.
exchanges with these races,
Okay.
and remember, I want to make it very clear that the name of the race, for example, Pleiadian, is made up of many different races. It's not
Oh,
there
okay.
isn't just it's not just Pleiadian as pure, let's say, a pure breed or a pure group.
Hmm.
They're very mixed up. We are all cocktails of DNA, because if we didn't have the cocktail of DNA within us, we wouldn't be able to travel
Yeah.
interdimensionally. That's number
Yeah.
one thing. Okay.
Right.
And the other thing is that these Pleiadians historically have not really been in the highest benefit of humankind, at least the ones that have been very proactive in these hybridization programs. Many Pleiadian descendants through history have implemented in our society inverted information that manipulated a lot of our understanding of sexuality, of tantra, of the use of our life force in ways that have inhibited the progression of humanity, but have contributed to sustaining the hybridization program. And so what that means is that there's the agenda being that, as long as you maintain the human aware to a certain extent, or I mean unaware to a certain extent, they can be utilized in order to create these kinds of hybrids. And
Mm.
unconsciously or consciously isn't really the matter for them, as long as the new organisms are being created that are then seeding the generations that are coming. And some of these new children that are being created are absolutely super high vibration and super activated. But it's not like that's a natural element of this existence that we live in, because we are constantly reaching higher octaves of vibrational frequency collectively. So every
Yeah.
new generation that's created is always going to match the next octave, because they need to evolve. And in order for them to survive in this new timeline that's being created, they have to match that vibrational frequency
Yeah.
every time. So
That's
every
why
child that's
that's why the new babies are quite aware,
yeah.
you know? Yeah,
Yes,
makes
exactly. And
sense.
we notice that because we've seen many waves, we call them waves,
Yeah,
of children, but even you and I, we
yeah,
participate in a certain wave of certain generation of consciousness and activation.
yeah.
So the thing is that really high vibration beings that are more like orbs of light, high
Mm-hmm.
geometric structures of consciousness, um, these beings that are closest to the white light, which is source, the all-encompassing
Yeah.
origin of all that is, projected, these beings will not interfere in any way because they completely embody the compassion, the unconditional
Yeah.
love, and the state of unity consciousness, and where they understand the laws of free will, which means that you don't interfere with any other organism and their spiritual journey.
Yeah.
So when I discovered that by looking at my hybridization program and beginning to observe other people's hybridization program, you begin to see really clearly that the line is drawn at some point within a
Yeah.
certain dimensional reach. It seems that beings up until at least the 13th dimensional layer in
Mm-hmm.
which we exist
Mm-hmm.
all seem to have an interest in sustaining the function of the matrix, meaning they want to continue the reincarnation cycle in whatever means possible.
Yeah.
So, and the way I'm saying it right now might seem like, oh, there's an agenda between certain individuals that are being parasitic. But in reality, it's a natural, when you see it from above, it's a
Yeah.
natural expression of how duality self-organizes itself in order to maintain a
Yeah.
balance, because we are
Right.
participating in a balance here. This three-dimensional plane. I mean, there's always the exact number of humans on this earth, believe it or not, even though we have many things that make humans exit at certain times in
Yeah.
waves, but every amount of organisms that are participating on the earth are the vibrational balance that maintain everything in order, because this universe and all organisms abide by the morphogenetic field. And the
Yeah.
morphogenetic field is essentially the intelligence that knows how to maintain a balance for the entire whole, beyond just our Earth. So this is kind of a way to look at it. So I don't really think of it like, oh, those Pleiadians, they're very bad.
Yeah.
I don't think of it that way. And I hope to invite more people to kind of broaden their perspective when we think of these things,
Yeah.
because we need to look at it more of a collaborative organism, and our participation in that really depends on our level of consciousness
Yeah.
and how we are utilizing our free will, our sovereignty over our body consciousness. That is what really begins to shift the collective for ourselves and for the whole.
Yeah. So I know that you've been aware and you've told us that you were meditating, you were into spirituality way before you had these particular experience, and all of the memories came to you that even certain things happened in
Yeah.
the past. So you were
Hmm.
unlike an average human being who doesn't believe in aliens or a source energy and things like that. But still, with all of that understanding, with having all of that understanding, was it ever traumatic when you when things didn't quite make sense to you? Was it ever traumatic for you being on the aircraft?
Um,
Or yeah, go
you know
ahead.
what? My experience in 2013 w- broke my paradigm, because I was meditating and my meditation took me into the direction of breaking down the systems of what make up our reality. And
Yeah,
it's a process of deprogramming through my emotional trauma to understand how does humans end up traumatized. What is that? Where does that come from?
yeah,
And kind of deconstructing social systems, and everything that collaborates in our history to produce these kinds of systems, which are, I'm not the only one. I mean, every single human is a product of the system in some way. So what
yeah,
that allowed me to see was that there is something more. There is something beyond just the human structures. It's not really even our government, because my idea was like, oh, maybe it's the government, maybe it's religion, but there
yeah.
is
It's a whole
something much
conspiracy.
more. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's more than that, and it's an intelligence that transcends humans in the natural order of things. And so when we start going in that direction, I was thinking, but what is there? What is beyond that? And that's when I had that experience in 2013. So when I saw the ETs, I mean, I was shocked because I couldn't even
Yeah.
compute. That wasn't even anywhere in my sphere, you know? So I had to quickly catch up. But that did not cause me trauma because they left me with a gift of letting me experience a unity consciousness and a peace interconnectedness to all things that I had never experienced in my entire life.
Yeah.
And it was the most beautiful thing that I will never forget. I still remember that feeling up until now, and I use it as a reference to come back in my meditation in case, you know, something
Yeah.
takes me off balance. But from that moment forth, and in addition to my intuitive abilities coming online, having that spiritual foundation and having the new psychic abilities allowed me to connect the dots in a way that I didn't feel fear anymore
Mm-hmm.
about the unknown. And in 2017, when I had the hypnotherapy and I began to channel this information that I saw, you know, as being shown as from the history of mankind and relationship to the hybridization program, that was another level of existential crisis that I had to navigate. And I would say that the things that happened after those hypnotherapies were the things that were probably the most traumatizing. And those things were actually as a result of me coming public with my contact experience and sharing what had happened to me. So that's where things started to get interesting. And it didn't have anything to do with interdimensionals. It had to do with shadow groups that involve certain aspects of government that try to control this information and the sharing of the information. They are covered uh, by groups that put on conferences, and they are covered by groups that um, you know, they kind of promote disinformation of the UFO, the ET topic, trying to redirect people's attention to the UAP topic as opposed to having the topic on consciousness and interdimensionality, which is essential for people to even begin to comprehend the topic of ETs. And you know, this is it's so I but I think we're getting there. I think that we are coming close to some kind of um, collective disclosure. We have the government that just released those documents that talk a lot about pregnancies, you know, that are they said that it's been recorded that they discovered pregnancies as a result of being in the presence of these UAPs and medical
Mm-hmm.
side effects, psychological side effects. So they know clearly, and they are talking about it. And my sense is that, you know, they're going to come out much more openly. As you saw over the week, they talked about Russia, you know, shooting down a UAP or whatever. I think we're going to start seeing it more in the news now. So I think that we're kind of preparing. And when we think about trauma, you know, what trauma really is any time that we don't have the tools, the emotional tools or the memory tools in order to navigate a moment of unknown. So I think
Yeah.
that for any topic, whether it's UFO or anything, we need to train ourselves in learning how to navigate the unknown. That's our power as humans interdimensionally. And I think that's the invitation with topic of ETs, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. So, yeah, you were very right that, trauma is all about we not having the tools to cope with a certain very unexpected experience that we are not
Yeah.
ready for, right? And maybe if the same scenario happened, when we know how to cope or how to navigate through the same scenario, whether it's ET or another traumatic experience, whether being on an aircraft, whether you give consent or not. Yeah. So it
Yeah.
really differs from person to person. And as we grow spiritually, it changes.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Right.
even our trauma, I feel a trauma changes us for the positive. That's also another thing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
And I think most people that have traumas, I mean, we can talk for hours about traumas because
yeah,
traumas also are inherited. We inherit trauma responses in our nervous system, in our parasympathetic nervous system, and
hmm,
psychologically patterns that we are holding memory in our muscles from children,
yes,
but also intergenerationally, the same way that our grandparents, great grandparents in World War something, causes an effect in intergenerationally within groups of families. So we also are learning how to cope and work with that. We have to be able to transcend that and then continue transcending unknown situations as we continue evolving. It's a never-ending journey. That's the thing that we need to understand and kind of reach a new level of maturity spiritually, because we seem to have an idea that once you, let's say, wake up or you have one enlightening moment, you're going to be living in peace forever, and that's
yeah,
definitely not the
that
case.
doesn't
It's
happen.
it's actually, yeah, it's that contrast that creates that transmutation and transduction of changing the energy from the lowest to the highest point. That's what we are. We're like alchemists of
Yes.
emotions.
Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. And that makes so much sense because uh, I am so pissed at the whole, this whole concept of toxic positivity out there, among a lot of spiritual teachers, and it does more damage than good because
Right.
a lot of people think, it's spirituality is all about being calm all the time and not
Yeah.
having any anger issues or but it's just the opposite. It's embracing your emotions and learning to work with them. So yeah,
Right.
so this is all
Exactly. And
about that.
and yeah, and when we reach a really higher understanding in these spiritual levels, we begin to see that actually cultivating neutrality is a key,
Yeah.
because when you cultivate neutrality from a state of observation, we have an
Yeah.
opportunity of flowing through any circumstance where it doesn't break. You know what they say, what doesn't bend breaks. You
Mm-hmm.
just continue moving like water through these experiences in a non-judgmental manner, maintaining homeostasis in your body energetically. That
Yes.
maintains health, vitality, increased immune system, a balance with nature and the circadian rhythms of the earth. And that pulls forward the activation of your higher faculties, like your intuition and your
Mm-hmm.
discernment, right? Because that's the key, to be able to develop a highly, highly intuitive discernment, that you begin to create such a powerful trust with yourself that the unknown is okay, because you trust yourself and you know that you'll be able to navigate any unknown situation regardless what happens. And that's
Yeah.
really where the human finds their liberation and sovereignty.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Right. So, talking about, our body, I would like to know if you felt any, I know that a lot of gifts opened up for you. You started seeing, um, I don't know how to put it into words. You start seeing auras and more than
Yeah.
the physical construct, so that you could use that information for healing and other things. But did you also experience certain physical changes in your body?
Mhm.
Did
Yes.
you change as a person, as the physical construct after the experience?
Yes, in a way, yes. I think one of the most powerful things that I was able to access was incredible health.
Mm.
Because and I will say that prior to that experience in 2013, I had other experiences which I talk about, I think last time in some detail, where I did have spontaneous healings, and also moments where I became gravely ill all of a sudden and then
Yeah.
healing again. But all of those were directly related to my interdimensional contact. So it's a process. But the intuitive abilities that were activated in me were more like, let's say, a medical intuition where you can sense and you merge with the person's body and you can feel everything that they're feeling, what's going on in their emotional system, and
Hmm.
understand the connection, the intuitive connection to
Yeah.
those blockages in the body. So if they have pain in their liver, you see the blockage in their field, you understand how many dimensions that goes. The past lives are connected to that, and what kind of information is being trapped or repeated cyclically. And so that's kind of what I use for my work in DNA reprogramming. And
Hmm.
in hypnotherapy, I use my gifts in order to see and travel with the person into whatever they're going, to figure out how to utilize what they're seeing and link it back to what they're experiencing here on Earth. And, my job is to be able to see both dimensions and help navigate and allow them to understand and integrate essentially that work. So, but yes, physically, um, I understand how to heal myself, and I've experienced that power immensely many times, even during a near-death experience in 2018. 18, where I died for some time and went into the white light and experienced utilizing my gifts to come back. That if it
Wow.
wasn't for that, I don't think I would have come back, because I understood how to manage the choice, the free will,
Yeah.
in that moment, and kind of sign a new lease on life. And so now we're
Hmm.
living that second lease now. So the power of activating your intuitive abilities, and even though my story is unique in that I had that contact experience, the activation of my abilities is not unique at all. This is something that every single human can activate in their body and do, and it's what I teach. And I think that's the purpose why I have those gifts now, is to teach them, to help
Yeah.
people learn to use them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So I know that certain people are chosen for these programs, whether it's for hybridization, whether it's for human growth, whether it's for healing, whether it's for working interdimensionally with them. But can also somebody who is interested set an intention for it and receive their help? I know we can channel. I mean, that's what I do. We
Yeah.
receive light language. We can use all the information in healing. But can somebody set an intention to specifically work with a race? Does that work? Does that happen?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But what we need to understand is that your interest in that group is actually because it's already in your DNA. It's
Ah,
already a part of you. Okay. So and it's very interesting, people that are doing spiritual work, they will taste, let's say, the plethora
yeah.
of different species as they evolve. They will become
Yes.
interested in many things. They will interact with many things. And that is you navigating your morphogenetic field, because it's what you're made out of. And what's actually happening is that you're becoming conscious in simultaneous timelines in which you already exist in connection with these beings. And many
Mm,
people are those beings. They are them. I
yeah.
see this in my hypnotherapies a lot. They have a sense and an intense connection to blue beings, let's say,
Mhm.
and they discover they were the blue being in many
Yeah.
lifetimes,
Yeah.
right? So they're
Right.
navigating simultaneously. Yeah, and most people, because it comes like a dream state, we
Right.
just we just need to understand what dreams actually mean. It's interdimensional travel. So when we're
Yeah.
traveling out of body, we have access to all those things. The valuable thing is for the traveler to be able to remember what they experience. That's how we
Yeah.
activate more DNA. And that depends on your level of consciousness and your awareness, which needs to
Yeah.
be trained in waking state, so that you become more lucid. The more lucid you become, the more you're spinning your toroidal field so that you have a clear navigation. essentially. Yeah.
Hmm.
So it's kind
Yeah.
of like from the inside out that occurs, what you're just saying.
Right. Unlike we thinking that we are actually setting an intention, but we setting an intention comes from a deeper
Yes.
contract
Subconscious.
that, yeah,
Yes.
subconscious, which makes total sense because I was always, since I was a little girl, I was always interested in UFOs and things like that. But I mean, when I was little,
Amazing.
not much was there out there. I couldn't access the internet, but I would
Mm-hmm.
just look up and think about all these things. And I always loved movies and documentaries, which later on, I realized as I started channeling and light language came in, then I got in writing that, it's coming. I just asked out where it is coming from. And I was so naive that I had no understanding of all these races, or I, in fact, didn't know that I was channeling. But it later on, slowly, step by step, it made sense that I was working with Pleiadians because I myself was a Pleiadian, in
Mm-hmm.
multiple
Right.
lives. So I have
Yes.
ancestry,
Right.
and that's why they're stepping in, which is beautiful. Which, yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly what you said right now. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Exactly. That's amazing. That's
yeah.
a great example. Yeah.
So you mentioned being lucid. So is there a way? I know when we meditate and we set awareness, we improve our awareness, and we always say, like, you can even say it out loud that give me clarity as I sleep, or, you can affirm it or set an intention of remembering your dreams. But do you have like a small tip or a process so that people can remember
Yeah.
more?
Yeah. So what it means to become lucid, it's a bioelectrical slash biochemical process. It's
Okay.
actually a matter, your presence is your reconnection of a mind body, which means that you're connecting neural pathways with the nervous system. Though you're connecting that runway of information. And how you do that is by coming into the present moment and feeling the entire body, training yourself to access the communication that your entire body is processing all the time. Because we are not a see, most of our vision is like right here. It's everything that we see here directly in front of us, maybe top, top to here, here to here, but we forget about the back of the body, we forget about the rest of our body, but the
Yeah.
entire body is actually processing data from around us. um, and the information that's being processed is not just spatial information, it's interdimensional information as well. So
Yeah.
becoming lucid means training ourselves to activate the sensory system through the five senses of our body, six senses essentially, in order to learn how to speak the language of vibrational frequency. And that
Mm.
means that we are constantly choosing what we allow to affect us. So the becoming lucid really requires that consent of what you're feeling. And that this is how
Yeah.
empaths train how to have healthy boundaries with what they're
Right.
reading. One of the most important tools in this process is that we need to come into a state of observation and not judgment, because anytime that
Yeah.
we observe something weird or funny, or feels funny, or we feel a warm temperature, some people are extremely sensitive, we
Yeah.
immediately apply a meaning to it. We apply
Yes.
a definition, and that definition that we apply is immediately blocking us from seeing anything beyond that. So that's kind of like counter created for us. So in this process, we have to be able to be completely fluid in our senses, just simply observing non-judgmentally, collecting the information we can utilize if we need it, and navigate. Imagine from the moment that you wake up into the moment you go to sleep, if you do this, it changes yourself electromagnetically, biochemically, super powerfully, because you are bringing the brain into alpha state, which allows the nervous system to come into a self-regulation, which allows your immune
Yeah.
system to come into a super healing mode, and it allows you to sleep better. which means that your patterns of your body are aligning with the natural rhythms of the earth. The best time for the human to sleep is between the time of 10 and 2 a.m. These are the most regenerative hours for the human in whatever time sphere you're in the world, because the organs have a certain order in how they regenerate. And every
Oh,
hour between 10 and 2 a.m. is essentially linking with those organs, the liver, the spleen, the kidneys, the lungs. All of these main organs are connecting with one another, and they become transducers of life force. So when these organs are working and functioning in harmony, and you are able to feel joy in your organs,
yeah,
and I just tell my clients, smile with your organs. When you
yeah,
do that, especially the sexual organ, because you begin to heal and regenerate the energy that we're usually depleting in a way of unconsciousness. So
yeah,
this is actually the way to begin to become lucid, because what happens is that when you sleep, you're going to be high functioning, which means that you're rotating your vortex really fast. And the faster the vortex is spinning, the faster you leave the body and the higher you're able to travel interdimensionally, which means that your travel or your dream time will be more pleasant, more productive, more conscious, more lucid, and also more sovereign in a way where you can kind of choose, as opposed to being engaging in parasitic or traumatic experiences.
right.
So there's kind of steps, I created an acronym called GPAC. It's very simple: grounding, protecting, aligning, and co-creating.
Mm,
The chakras are not just stationary vortices in the
yeah,
body. They
they're
actually make up,
rotating.
yeah, and they make up the fields of our body. They are
Yeah,
they are holographically projecting in our field. They make up our perceptions. So if we are in a state of fears, the root chakra is super hyperactive, and it's filtering what we're seeing and how we're experiencing the world. So we need to learn how
mm,
to balance the chakras. We have to open and close them. We have to learn how to control them, in order to shift from fear into neutrality or love. And
yeah,
this essentially is part of the alignment. And the next part of this GPAC is co-creation. One of the most powerful tools that the human has in manifesting and shifting reality is activating the seventh and eighth chakra, which are directly connected with the seventh and eighth dimensional plane, which is the DNA of the earth. It's the morphogenetic field, it's the Akashic database of information. So when we activate and consciously connect to that, we begin to gently shift from the karmic cyclical patterns of repetitive ancestral trauma into
yeah,
conscious co-creation. Yeah. And this is really powerful because it allows us to kind of change what we're experiencing and break, parasitic contracts. So those are some
yeah.
quick tools that I could share with
Yeah,
you. Yeah.
so I think for someone who wants to work, who wants to improve emotional regulation, they can they can
Yeah.
start with working with their chakras initially, right? And even if they do not know, major spiritual practices or deep meditations, they can maybe do a simple chakra cleanse on a regular basis and start with that
Yes.
and more grounding and things like that, right?
Yes, but I would say for a lot of people that have overactive chakras, it's going to be difficult for them to even connect or to see their chakras
Mm,
sometimes. So
mm-hmm.
I would highly suggest doing the emotional work and connecting immediately with the emotion that most takes you out of balance. You can
Yeah,
get a lot done like that, and you can
right.
quickly move into next levels very quickly. So if you're in a state of stress, okay, take a moment, do what you need to do, and then find a quiet place to sit with that stress. Notice what part of the body tenses up
Yeah,
and sit with that tension. That discomfort is packed with information that is the subconscious program. So when you sit with it, it begins to unpack the layers of emotions, and you can understand the strongest layers and follow them to the root. You feel the next strongest emotion, feeling each one, and it'll take and open up memories that led you through experiences to create the perception that creates the program that makes you reactionary to this trigger
Yeah.
and puts you in a state of anxiety. So through this process, you can quickly heal and see the parts of you that have been suffering as a result of those triggers, and heal, nourish, support, protect, learn how to nourish yourself. And through the emotional body, learn what is the opposite. Okay, let's say if you're in a state of fear, well, what's the opposite of fear? Many people, they think they can answer that question, but a lot of people don't really know.
Yeah.
They get confused. And that
Yeah.
confusion means you don't know your emotions and you don't know why you feel the way you do. So if you feel the opposite of fear, now you're going to start learning and beginning to help the body recognize different emotions that are not
Yeah.
fearful. Emotions like joy, harmony, peace, balance. Even before you get to love, there's lots of emotions that humans need to learn.
Yeah.
So right there, you're going to learn how to reprogram your subconscious mind and your emotions. You heal yourself essentially.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you one last thing before we close.
Yeah.
Uh, I know we are constantly growing spiritually, but we need a certain, more so when we are growing, spiritually, more so we need certain practices that brings us back in, keeps us grounded, and we all have
Mhm.
different processes, different kinds of meditations for each of us. What is that one tool that you use on a regular basis, whether it's cleansing your energy or whatever, that you'd like to share with all of the viewers, that they can help
When,
to
yeah.
evolve, and also maybe emotional regulation and whatever you would like to
Yeah.
share?
The tool that I use the most is coming back to a kind of childlike state, in
Yeah,
that I become an explorer of my own experiences rather than fearful or judgmental of them. I find
yeah,
that when I bring myself into that state, it's easier to come into a flow state, and I don't constantly put myself in a state of victimization or helplessness. And it can be very powerful to maintain out of those states, because oftentimes when we do go into the states, we paralyze and we don't know what to do. We can get stuck there sometimes for years. So maintaining yourself in this kind of more fluid, even joyful laughter, having fun, those things really, really help. They're high vibration. Your entire body is joyful with you. So that's one way that I maintain myself throughout the entire day after meditating and doing the emotional work. The emotional work is
mm-hmm,
first. And then through the
mm-hmm,
day, you just try to create this connection with yourself. And one last thing I would say is to practice like absolute authenticity. Um,
yeah,
don't be afraid of truth, especially your truth. Be real about you, who you are, how you feel about things, and that's how you're going to quickly move out of, funks or stagnation. So, yeah, that's what I would share.
yeah.
Thank you so much, lovely.
Beautiful. That's amazing, and I'm sure people can use that. Also, please share everything about your work and how people can reach out to you.
Yeah, and thank you so much. I have a YouTube channel. You can subscribe to that. Right now, it's our last day of our 30-day challenge. We had an awesome alchemical transformation challenge, but the replays are available on my website and the YouTube. And if you want to work with me one-on-one, you can book a session at geraldineorozco.com, a DNA reprogramming or hypnotherapy. And if you're an experiencer and you want to learn more about your experiences, you can join my support group. Our next group is this coming Friday. And you're welcome. It's free, it's international, anyone can join. And that's at hybridmother.com. And I also have a lot of really awesome conferences coming up, that I would love for you to check out, especially the Ascension Conference. That's going to be in San Diego. So if you're anywhere in the California area and want to join us, we would love to see you there. It'll be in person.
Thank you so much for your time, Geraldine. As always, it was amazing, and I can go on this topic. There's so much to know, so much to learn. But
Yeah.
yeah, thanks
Thank
for
you so
today.
much. It was so great to be here. Much love.